As we think about this morning's reading out of Luke, I would like you to answer this question. Have you ever had an angel appear to you and deliver a message from God? If so, what was your very first reaction when the angel appeared to you? Were you filled with uncontainable joy? Or were you filled more with fear? Did you first think, hey, this is a pretty cool thing? Or did you start questioning your sanity? Did you want to run away from that angel, or did the fear prevent you from moving, maybe even prohibiting your ability to speak to the angel or scream out in terror? Well, I know that I have never had an angel physically appear to me as it has been recorded in this first chapter of Luke. Now, even though our focus this morning is on Mary's experience, the first chapter speaks about two separate appearances of the angel Gabriel. One to Mary, and then the other was to the priest Zechariah, who is the husband of Mary's cousin, Elizabeth. These two stories tell us of how differently Zechariah and Mary responded to their angelic encounters. They are accounts of what happened when Gabriel came calling. A short synopsis of Zechariah's encounter is something like this. Zechariah was one of many priests who rotated in service at the temple in Jerusalem. Zechariah and his wife Elizabeth are counted as very devout in their faith to God, and they are now old and have never been blessed with a child. Then one day, as Zechariah was serving in the temple, the angel sent from God comes and appears to Zechariah. Seeing that Zechariah was filled with great fear, the angel says, "Don't be afraid, Zechariah. God is going to bless you and Elizabeth with a child. And this child will bring both joy to you and your community, as well as help bring many people back to the teachings of the Hebrew faith." Zechariah questions this news by saying to the angel, "How do you expect me to believe this? What sign can you give me to prove this will happen?" The angel responds, "I am Gabriel. God has sent me to announce to you this good news. But since you did not believe my words, you will be stricken silent and unable to speak until the day my words have been fulfilled and a child is born to you. That will be your sign." And from that time on until John, their son, was born, Zechariah was not able to speak. Well, 6 months into Elizabeth's pregnancy is where our story picks up. And the young girl Mary also has a visit from the angel Gabriel saying, "Grace to you, for the Lord is with you, and so you are anointed with great favor." Favored? What do you mean by favored? Mary is said to have been deeply disturbed over the words of the angel and bewildered over what this may mean for her. Luke leads us to believe that Mary is not so afraid of the appearance of the angel Gabriel, but rather doesn't understand what the implications are to Gabriel's message. Then comes an important piece of this story for us, as Gabriel says to Mary, "Do not yield to your fear, for the Lord has found delight in you, and has chosen to surprise you with a wonderful gift. With the invitation to bear a son as an unwed mother, says Mary, this is amazing. I accept whatever God has for me, and may God's will come to pass. For Zechariah and Elizabeth, the visit from Gabriel with the news about having a child is an answer to many years of prayer. In their culture, there was an unspoken social shame for a couple if they did not have a child. But with the blessing of a child, their shame will be wiped away, and Elizabeth will be looked upon in her social group as being in good standing. This announcement is truly happy tidings of great joy. But Zechariah needed proof that they were being blessed by God. Show me that this is true. How many times do we ask the same thing of God when we are presented with an encounter with God that seems to be unbelievable? For Mary, this great gift of a child is a completely different story. She would be having a child out of wedlock. Even in our society, up until recent decades, meant a disgrace. And even now, there is still a social stigma that is discussed behind closed doors. Did you hear about Mary? She's going to have a baby. Poor thing. She isn't married, you know. And how is she ever going to find a man who will marry a woman with a child that isn't his? My mother found herself in a similar situation back in the early 1950s. She was married, became pregnant, then divorced before the baby was born. She was a single mother at the time of my birth, in a social community that didn't look very favorably upon that. Mother shared with me once that she had been urged to go away for a while, to have the baby and give it up for adoption. This way, she would be ensuring herself of being seen as by a potential husband as being respectable and worthy to bear his name. It would make life so much easier for her, she was told. This was the prospect that Mary had to face in her youth, in her time in history. As an unwed mother, she would have been ostracized by her community and most likely her family. She would have to resort to a way of life that no respectable woman would do in order to make a living for her and her child. No respectable man would attach himself to her. The child would always be seen as someone not worth of respect within that community because of his mother's indiscretion. Yet Mary did not yield to her fear of what the future must likely hold for her. Did she know what her future would be like? Not really. But she had a pretty clear knowledge of what it most likely would be like. Yet her faith and trust in God was so great that if God was asking her to take on this challenge of motherhood as a single mother, God would be with her and her son. It is this depth of faith that Jesus speaks about when he was telling his disciples, whoever opens their arms to receive God's kingdom like a teachable child will enter it. We can be like Zechariah and require some sort of guarantee of how things are going to work out when God comes to us. Or we can be like Mary and say, okay, Lord, I'm not sure what the future is going to hold for me, but I'm accepting your gift, your challenge. As a follower of Christ, we are asked to help build God's kingdom here on earth. And in order to do this, we are asked in many ways and many times to step out in faith, trusting the wisdom of God in order to live fully in God's kingdom. I asked you at the beginning of this reflection if you'd ever encountered an angel. How we nurture our faith, our trust in God, is what prepares us when Gabriel comes calling. Amen.